Hey, everybody, welcome to our Wednesday night virtual Bible study for November the 18th. We are moving right along, and being the 18th means that Thanksgiving is next Thursday. Hope you've made some great plans and you're going to enjoy that amazing time with family and friends. I think I said it last week, I'll say it again this week. After everything we've been through this year, I think it's extremely important that people be spending some time with family, and spiritual family has to be number one. We've just there's no replacement for our spiritual family, and it's good to see family, physical family, and blood ties as well. But don't forget your spiritual family as well. Spend some time with your spiritual family. Let's make sure we continue to forge those relationships as being the most important relationships on the earth. Those are the ones that help us get to heaven one day. So we need to maintain our associations together. But it's great to see you. Thanks for being with us. Glad you're here. Can I get you to do something as we start our study tonight? Two things. Number one, if you're on our YouTube channel, and we know that we have a few folks that watch via our YouTube channel, right below the video, just right below, I'm not sure if it's on this side or that side, you're going to see a red button that says subscribe. Will you push that button, subscribe? One, it will give you a notification when we have a new video up on YouTube, so you'll know when we have new content on that. It also, if we get enough subscribers, we get some features. It unlocks some editing tools and some features that will help us in the future make our videos better. And we want to try to do the best we can as Christians. You know, whatever your hand finds to do it with your might. Ecclesiastes 9:10, and we want to do that. So if you'll do that, subscribe, and also hit the thumbs up button. Give us a like. Tell us that you like the video, and comment below if you want to make a comment or ask a question. We are glad to interact with your comment below if we can be of service in regard to spiritual matters, especially this class. If you're on Facebook, please like the video, give us a thumbs up, hit the like button, and share the video so that your friends and your family members, everybody on your list of acquaintances on Facebook can see it as well. We'd be most grateful to you for doing that. You know, Thanksgiving is coming up, and we want to give thanks for you, the regular viewers of this program. Thank you so much for hanging in there and watching this program and viewing this program. It means a lot. And when we see all the views, we get to go to our counter after everything is over, and we see hundreds of people have watched the video. That's very encouraging to us. It also means maybe we're helping hundreds of people with Bible material. We have been talking about demons for the last couple of weeks, and that apparently is a huge subject for a lot of folks. We've had a lot of feedback on our discussion of demons. Now, we had a lot when we discussed angels, and a few weeks ago we transitioned out of our study of angels, and we're moving now to the study of demons. And for some reason, while they're both fascinating subjects, the subject of demons has really got folks talking and asking questions. And there's some extreme curiosities that come in the subject of demons. And we're doing our best. We did our best in the first couple of weeks to identify demon possession that was a phenomenon of the New Testament. It's not something that today people are going to be struggling with demon possession today. It was something related to the age of the miraculous. But now we want to try to figure out, now that we've got all that sort of under the belt, we want to try to figure out now what were demons like, and then spend the last couple of weeks trying to do our best to identify who demons were, what or who are they, because there's some sort of a personality, and that's what we're talking about tonight. They had some abilities that cast them as some type of a person. So we'll discuss that when we get to it next week. Tonight we want to talk about the personality of demons, their character. What were they like? And I've got my Bible open in Matthew chapter 8. If you want to turn your Bible to Matthew chapter 8, we're going to start in Matthew 8. Notice with me in Matthew 8, the first point we want to make tonight is that demons are spirit beings. I think we have about 7 or 8 points tonight. In my notes, I'll just go ahead. If you want to number 1 through 8 on your page, here's the first point tonight in the character of demons. Number 1, demons were spirit beings. They were spirit beings. If you're in Matthew 8, let's drop down and let's notice verse 16. Very important verse for what we're using it for tonight. When evening had come, they brought to him many who were demon-possessed. That's what we talked about in the weeks prior, demon possession. It was a phenomenon. We believe God allowed it for the reason of showing the glory of his son Christ, of Jesus. And every time we read about them in the New Testament, they're being cast out. So here's demon possession, and notice, and he cast out spirits, the spirits, back a reference to the demon possession, with a word. They had to obey the Son of God. When he said that, they had to do it. They obeyed when he spoke, and he healed all who were sick. So notice that in this passage that you have the demon possessed, and then it said he cast out the spirits, which would mean that demons and spirits are references to the same entities. And that tells us that demons are spirit beings. Here's why that's important. And we made mention, I think it was about 2 weeks ago. If you're trying to learn all about demons from a Hollywood movie, if I'm trying to do that, I'm going to be all kinds of messed up when I've come away from that movie, because they're going to suggest that they're this or that, and that they're, and that they have some sort of a form that's sort of the standard demon form. They're spirit beings. And here's why that's important. Go to Luke 24. Luke chapter 24. And this is talking about Jesus, but Jesus is going to make just a generic statement, sort of a generic universal principled truth about spirit beings. So here we go. Jesus is proving to his disciples repeatedly that his body has actually come out of the grave. And what they're seeing in the Son of God is they're not seeing a ghost. Jesus is a human being, been raised from the grave. He still has his body, even though it would be changed in the ascension. Drop down with me to verse 38. Jesus says, now remember, back in the previous verse, they thought they had seen a ghost. I think the King James says ghost. Mine, New King James says a spirit. Jesus says, why are you troubled? Verse 38. Why do doubts arise in your hearts? Listen to verse 39 carefully. Behold my hands and my feet. Now he's showing physically his hands and his feet. He's pointing to the parts of his body, that they would be interested in. Of course, this is very similar to what he did with Thomas. Remember, with Thomas, he said, here's my hands. You can feel the holes in my hands from the nails. And here's my side. I was pierced with a spear in the side. He said, behold my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see. And then here comes the universal, principled, generic, eternal truth. He says, a spirit does not have flesh and bones as you see me have. Now, we did this when we talked about angels, that angels were spirit beings, and as such, they didn't have a physical form. They don't have a literal physical form. They're literal beings. They exist. They're just spirit beings. Demons are spirit beings. That means that demons do not have a physical form. Now, they may have inhabited the body of a person, but the body of that person was the physical form, and it was attached to that individual because that man or that woman was flesh and blood. But demons themselves had no flesh and blood. They have no physical form at all. So if anybody draws you a picture and says, I think this is probably what a demon looks like, that's inaccurate. It's just simply not true, because demons don't have flesh and blood. They're not corporal beings. Like God is a spirit being, angels are spirit being, demons are spirit beings. Now they may help us in the next section when we get to talking about their identity. Who are they? There's about four major opinions on that. A couple of those we'll just sweep aside and say those are rather ludicrous ideas, which gives us, I think, two strongly debated ideas on the identity of demons. But having in mind that they're spirit beings is going to help us when we get to that beginning next week. So number one, demons are spirit beings. Number two, demons possess free will. Demons possess free will. Let's go back to the Gospel of Matthew and let's look at chapter 12, Matthew chapter 12. And let's go to Matthew 12 and let's take a look at verse 44. Matthew 12, verse 44. Okay? Are you there? Let's take a look. Now here's the context to it. Verse 43. When an unclean spirit goes out of a man, he goes through dry places seeking rest, he finds none. Then he says, I'll return to my house. That would be the body of the person he left, from which I came. And when he comes, he finds it empty, swept, and put in order. Verse 45, he goes and takes with him 7 other spirits more wicked than himself, and they enter and dwell there, and the last state of the man is worse than the first. So shall it be also with this wicked generation. Notice here that in verses 44 and in 45, the Spirit speaks, and when this Spirit is speaking, notice he says, I will return. And when he finds it, he says, I'm going to bring 7 other spirits mightier than myself. But notice he says, I will. All the actions being undertaken by this. He leaves, he returns, he determines to return, he brings back 7 spirits more wicked than himself. He does this. These are statements to the acknowledgement of the free will or the volition of a demon. Satan himself has free will. Obviously, he's under the authority of God. We'll talk about that in a moment. But it doesn't deny the fact that they have free will. That's also going to help us next week when we start talking about who are they. Can we identify who they are? But whoever these persons are, they're clearly persons. They possess freedom to choose. They make choices. Now, we believe that would, in the context of everything we've discussed thus far, it would fall under the context or within the context of God allowing them to do certain things. But demons, number 2, demons possessed volition or free will. So they had that. They had the ability to make choices. Number 3, they apparently also possessed the ability to travel. In the same passage in Matthew 12, notice in verse 45, he goes. Now, in the first part, verse 43, he goes out of the man and goes through dry places seeking rest. And then in verse 44, he can return. And then in verse 45, he goes. So he has the ability to travel. And if we could connect that to the previous point, he can independently travel where he wants to travel. Okay, so demons were not just they weren't like electricity, right? That somebody just accidentally stuck their finger in a light socket and all of a sudden their hair stands on end and they seem crazy because they've just had a surge of energy through their body. Demons aren't that at all. Demons were persons. They're spirit persons. They're spirit persons with free will, and they're spirit persons who have the ability to freely move from one place to another. So those are 3 characteristics of demons. Here's the 4th, number 4. We believe, based on the teaching of Scripture, that demons were incredibly intelligent beings. Incredibly intelligent beings. Let's move away from Matthew for just a moment. Let's go to Luke chapter 4. Would you go with me to the Gospel of Luke and let's go to chapter 4? Luke 4. And we are going to drop down to verse 34. Let's see. Verse 31, here's the context. Just to grab a little background information before we get to the verse we're going to look at. Verse 31, he went down to Capernaum, a city of Galilee, and was teaching them on the Sabbaths. So Jesus would go in. It would become the custom of Paul too. It was a great opportunity to be able to, when it was their turn to speak, to get up and preach truth. And they were astonished at his teaching. Verse 32, for his word was with authority. They never heard anybody speak like that before. Verse 33, now in the synagogue there was a man who had a spirit of an unclean demon. Notice here again it confirms another point we made earlier. Demons are spirits. Demon, spirit used interchangeably. And he cried with a loud voice. Watch what happens, verse 34. Listen to what's being asked. Here's the spirit. Let us alone. What have we to do with you, Jesus of Nazareth? Did you come to destroy us? I know who you are. You are the Holy One of God. And of course, Jesus would command in verse 35, be quiet, and he commanded that the demon would come out, and the demon did what the Lord said. But notice in verse 34 that the demon is requesting information and presenting the fact that he knows information. This is the ability to assimilate information, to take information in, to make decisions based on factual presentations. So he's assimilating factual information. He's taking facts in, making a decision. He's presenting what he knows regarding a certain case. That is an indication of great intelligence on the part of the demons. And as we get into their identity, that may help us a little bit, especially what they knew about Jesus. I think is one of the great proofs of who demons were in the four major opinions, two of which I think are just they're junk opinions. I don't think they're worth a grain of salt. And two of the remaining opinions are pretty good. And of those two, things like they're spirit beings, they can travel, they have free will. They possess great intelligence. Especially, they possessed a knowledge of the Son of God. They knew who Jesus was. They were able to identify Jesus. I think is going to help us when we get to the identity. But demons apparently were very intelligent beings. They made terrible choices. Anytime any being would deny the Son of God, and demons acknowledged Jesus, they just didn't obey him. They were in rebellion to him, even though they, and respectfully so, acknowledged who he was. Here's the next point, number 5. So that means, they're intelligent, they're spirit beings, they have free will, they have the ability to move. Number 5, they possessed religious sensitivity. Religious sensitivity. Now I say it that way because, as I just mentioned, understanding a certain truth, knowing that something is true, is different than actually submitting to what the requirements are of that religious truth. And demons were right there. They knew something to be true, but they didn't do anything about it. So go to James 2, James chapter 2. James chapter 2. I'm sorry, I've got pages falling out of my Bible, so it's tough sometimes to turn to a page when they're all falling out of place. James chapter 2. And this is in a section dealing with faith, what faith really should look like. And he gets to James 2, starts in verse 14. Remember, he uses the illustration about how can you really say you have faith if you don't do anything. It would be like somebody coming and knocking on your door and saying, I need help. We're without clothing. We don't have any food. And you say, that's great. I hope that you have some clothing and food, and you send them on their way. You've not done anything. You haven't affected the situation. Faith is not like that. Faith is not just it's not talk, it's action. That's what real faith is. It's demonstrated. And so he's going to use an illustration with demons. Look at verse 19. This should be scary to anybody that believes but doesn't do anything about it. Verse 19, you believe there's one God? Right? Isn't that a good thing for people to believe? He says, even in verse 19, you do well. That's a good thing to believe that there is one God. He says, even demons believe and tremble. Even demons believe and tremble. Okay, so here's the idea. And the word tremble here means to shudder. They literally quake. It means to be struck with extreme fear. They are horrified at the reality of that. And not just the reality of it, they're horrified because they know the end of their disobedience. Demons were not atheists. They weren't. Demons weren't polytheists. They were monotheists. They were not atheists. They believed in one God. So they did possess religious sensitivity to the degree that they shuddered over their knowledge of God. They just did not obey Him. And depending on their identity, and you may know which way I lean already, I tend to think that demons were fallen angels. That's what I think. And I think that would go right along with the fact that they were able to identify Jesus Christ. They knew who Christ was. They knew who the Messiah was. And they knew about Jesus, and they acknowledged that in the way that they talked to Him. So, number 5, they possessed religious sensitivity. But we'll go through, starting next week, we'll start the opinions. And I'll try to be fair with all of them, with the exception of the 2 that just, I think they're unscriptural because of what they imply. They're just not feasible explanations. But we're eventually going to come down to say they're either the departed spirits of wicked men or they are fallen angels. I think they're fallen angels based on their characteristics, my opinion. Number 6, here's the 6th. They possessed personal responsibility. They even acknowledged having personal responsibility and accountability to God. Now, if you go back to Matthew chapter 8, where we started some of our studies earlier, in Matthew 8, if we were to go down and look at verse 29, Matthew 8, verse 29, we can start in verse 28. When he had come to the other side of the country of the Gergesenes, there met him 2 demon-possessed men coming out of the tombs, exceedingly fierce, so that no one could pass that way. And suddenly they cried out, saying, "What have we to do with you, Jesus, you Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time?" Now you look at what they're admitting here. When they say, "Have you come to torment us before the time?" they're admitting they know the reality of their choice. They know the end of the decision that they've made in their rebellion against Jesus. They know that they were personally responsible for their rebellion, and that attached to that personal responsibility was, in the balance of life or death, and they chose death. They chose eternal separation from God. They knew that they were going to be tormented for their choices. So they knew that there would be a time, an appointed time, in which they would give an account for their wickedness and be punished as a result of that. That is the acknowledgement of personal responsibility. And they didn't deny it. They weren't saying we don't have accountability. They certainly did have personal responsibility. In fact, in many of the examples of demons in the New Testament, they acknowledged hell. They knew in eternal fire. Here it is in verse 29, I think, stated specifically, torment us before the time. And I think that is their understanding of coming judgment and what the end for them will be after judgment. And then you have, 2 Peter 2:4, they're reserved in chains of darkness until the time. So they know what their end is going to be like. So here's number 7 in our list of 8 things. Number 7, they were under the authority of Christ. Okay, they even verbally admitted such. I want to go back to the Gospel of Luke for just a second. Luke chapter 8. Luke chapter 8. And in Luke 8, will you drop down with me to verse 31? Verse 31. Verse 30, Jesus says, "What is your name?" And he said, "We are legion." It indicates more than one demon. "We are legion because many demons had entered him." Verse 31, "And they begged him that he would not command them to go out into the abyss." But that's eventually what happened. But they're acknowledging here that they're under the authority, under the command of Jesus. And, he puts them in the herd of swine. The herd of swine runs into the deep. Notice here, they go into the water. They run off the cliff into the water. But they knew they were under the command of Jesus Christ. They're verbally admitting that. Okay, so they're under the authority of Christ. They have all these characteristics. One final characteristic, number 8 in our list of 8. In character, they are evil. Now, they didn't start that way, right? Regardless of what they are, okay, we're going to try to come to a conclusion about that. We may even end up You may have an opinion different than mine on that. But whatever they are, I think we can all agree, when God made the world, everything started good. There's nothing that's born evil or inherently corrupt. It's just not. But now, by their choices, they are characterized as evil beings at this point. And I want to go back to the passage we started with in Matthew chapter 12. Matthew chapter 12, where the demon goes out and he comes back. It's empty, so he brings back 7 more. Matthew 12, and let's notice in verse 43 beginning, when an unclean spirit, notice that language, unclean spirit. That means he's not pure. And then dropping down to verse 45, then he goes and takes with him 7 other spirits more wicked than himself. And wicked here means evil. It literally means morally malignant or injurious. Demons are injurious in character. They're not helpful spiritually, morally. It's not like they were created that way, but by their choices, they are now in character evil. So, I don't know if there's any indication here of this. This is just food for thought. It's interesting, verse 45. He goes and he takes with him 7 other spirits more wicked than himself. Are there degrees of wickedness in demons? Are some worse than others? Though they would all be bad, but maybe is there a degree of wickedness in some of the demons that we read about in the Bible? Are some apparently worse than others? Are they, what would that mean exactly? I don't know. But the Bible does say more wicked than himself, even though he's an unclean spirit, but there are some apparently more wicked than him, even though they're all bad. Food for thought. Okay, so we have 8 things tonight that we covered regarding demons. We said, number 1, demons are spirit beings. Okay, so they're not corporal beings. They don't have a body. They don't have flesh and blood. They have free will. They're able to make decisions. They are able to travel, and based on the former, they're able to travel at will. They are intelligent beings. They have the ability to assimilate facts and information. They possess religious sensitivity. They possess responsibility, personal accountability, and they never denied having personal responsibility. They are under the authority of Jesus Christ, and they even verbally admitted such as well. And in character, they are classified as unclean or wicked beings. Now, everything that we know about demons so far, with the exception of one thing, has been covered. That leaves us for the next couple of weeks to determine to the best of our ability, who they are. Who are demons? What is their identity? Now, I'm going to give you a preview of the 4 main views coming up in the next couple of weeks. There are some who believe that when you read Genesis chapter 1, there is a pre-Adamic race of people. That there were people on the earth before Adam, and they were so wicked that God destroyed them, and the souls of all of those people, that pre-Adamic race, constitute the hordes of demons that we read about in the Bible. That's one opinion. I think that's patently false. We're going to find out why. Number 2, there are some people who read Genesis 6 and say, hey, that must mean in Genesis 6 when the sons of God came to the daughters of men, those are angels and women cohabitating, having sexual relationships. And when the angels and the women had a sexual relationship, demons were the byproduct of that. Demons were produced as a result of that. I also think that is a fallacious view, and we're going to see why. The third view is that demons are the departed spirits of wicked men. There are some pretty conservative scholars who think that. There's a lot of folks and some pretty studied folks who think this is probably the case. They had affinity for tombs. They desired human bodies. We'll take a look at that. And then number 4 is the view that demons are wicked angels. And in my judgment, I think that's what they are. But we'll make a case and present it fairly for each of the 2 views that I think could be possible. And then we're going to try to show why the first 2 views are they're anti-scriptural. They're just not, they're views that do not harmonize with what the Bible teaches. So we'll see that. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. It really means a lot that you're here viewing us. We appreciate it. Please, again, share the video, Subscribe if you're on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up either way. Share the video and comment below if you want to comment or ask a question. Or if you're on Facebook, you can send it through our Facebook Messenger and we can get it that way and respond accordingly. Or you can just look up our contact information on our website, www.northamiltonchurchofchrist.com, and we have some info about the congregation there. Thank you so much. I love you. Be safe, and I'll see you next time.